I'm Chris Sorrell, AI Advisory Practice Lead here at Catalyte. I'm joined today by Jun Wang, our CTO, and Jason Foster, a Principal Architect here in our Data Science group. And today we're going to answer the question, what AI do you need? And of course, by that, we know that there are many different types of AI, and if you go online, every company will tell you you need theirs, and it's going to revolutionize your organization. Let's boil that down, distill it a little bit, and see if we can sort through the hype into some understanding of what kind of AI exists, how can it help my business, and what's it going to cost me. So I am super excited to get into this. Let's go. This time we're going to talk maybe more broadly about AI in the sense of at a business level, like what AI do we need? Because if I go on to the web or I go onto LinkedIn and look, it's going to tell me 1,000 different kinds of AI that I need for my business. And they're all promising, of course, that they're going to revolutionize my business. And they all seem to use that same term, revolutionize, for some reason. But maybe we can sort of look at some categories, some high-level view of what are we talking about with AI, and then maybe delve into the business cases a little bit around different types. So I guess maybe we'll start with, do we have, could we kind of break it down into major categories of AI that would be a first level to talk about?
We're going to brainstorm a little bit, and Jason can feel free to chime in. But I think the primary one these days everyone talk about is like some kind of a chatbot, some kind of a concierge service or whatever you call it. It's basically responding or replacing as a modular solution to an existing service, like customer service or sales or inbound rep or whatever you call it. But I want to take a step back to say, like, overall, we're talking about two main type of business solutions. One is a modular solution, one is a systemic solution. And the chatbot, the reason why people sort of gravitate towards that is because it's sort of a modular solution that people already do, and there's literally a department there, and we can sort of enhance the productivity of that particular department by employing AI. But there are certainly a lot of other solutions out there that is either modular or systemic that people have been thinking about and have successes.
Yeah, so it's easier. I think it's easier kind of a mindset to be able to, as you say, take that technology and kind of map it onto a part of my business or a section of my business that we're already doing, and just kind of do a better job of automating that, or do more machine, less human capital, if you will. And in some cases less cost. It's harder to find some of those other things because the categories of like traditional machine learning, you can easily break them down. How much, how many, how is this data organized, how is this classified, those kinds of things. The concepts are easy to understand and they're widely applicable, but it's harder, I think, to find a particular area unless you know that you have fraud detection that you need or threat detection. Unless you know that you're in the medical field and you want to make diagnosis, or you want to speed up some diagnosis or channel things in different ways because of what they saw in an image or things like that. It's a little harder to kind of take those steps and figure out how those are going to work, and how, are you prepared to have them work, as we were talking about before with data and with process, right? So I think it's easier to kind of focus on the chatbots, I think, right now.
Well, and I like, you talked about chatbots, and I try to marry solutions to business cases. And ultimately, if you talk about chatbots or concierge, and I like calling it that because really what we're talking about is using AI to augment or provide services to end users for engagement with organizations, right? So at a simple level, that's customer service, or that's, help me, like shopping assistance, or it's help me find content. And all of this is about that endpoint engagement. And so I feel like that's a really common bucket that we see, because we're always looking for how do we communicate more naturally and natively with our customers, with our users. So, I like to think about that as concierge. You talked a lot about sort of these other sort of use cases that are more specific, and those tend to be something where you might have a really modular thing where I'm going to solve some problem, and it's not something that can be solved by throwing a a large language model at it. I've got to pick something that's going to solve the particular problem. So, when we think about those type of platform services, what are the decisions we're making? What are we thinking about, LLM versus computer vision, et cetera?
I'll switch up a little bit, and we talk about just AI in general is enhancing productivity. And I think one of the other areas that we talked even before we talk about LLM and the generative AI in general is like engineering productivity or software engineering in particular. And I think these days, if you're writing code but not using AI, then you're definitely going to be missing out a lot of things. This is much better than Stack Overflow. So essentially, you have a better on-demand sort of Stack Overflow at your fingertips. So a lot of the sort of software engineering productivity thing in the past, GitHub Copilot and then any of the code generation tools or code completion tools are going to be extremely helpful if you have a engineering organization. I'm of the opinion that you probably still need more engineers, but each one of the engineers you have is going to be more productive, and then maybe at some point doesn't really cost as much.
Yeah, I did a project outside of software engineering when I first started my career with somebody who was an industrial engineer, and he goes into departments and goes into businesses, and he would do an assessment of the activities that they perform, and then he had this way of calculating things like fragmentation, how many people are doing these particular jobs, and his whole thing was he was always perceived as that consultant that would come in and just clean house and fire everybody and whatever. That's kind of how his industry was perceived at that time. But he would say, that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is to make sure that we have the right people doing the right jobs, and that the things that they're doing are mission critical, right? And if we can outsource things or do whatever, that's how you make those decisions. So this is kind of, to me, some of the same kinds of things as what you're talking about. You still have to have people to understand the context, as we talked about before, to put things together, and to have those kind of productivity tools makes what you're doing much more mission critical and makes you much more productive. But it's better for the company. It's better software quality, and it can be caught right when you're doing it, as opposed to later in static code analysis or code reviews or any of that stuff. It can be caught right now while it's happening.
So we have maybe another category we can call productivity, right? And whether that's general productivity or specific productivity, it's about using AI to tackle the tedious problems or the repetitive problems that we typically have been required to do, and ideally then we're leaving room for people to focus on high value tasks, to focus on innovation, to do the things that AI probably can't do.
Yep. Exactly. Interesting. And then back to your earlier question around large language model or like AI implementation, I think a lot of the problem that large language model or generative AI is helping to solve is the information overload problem. I think as like when you talk about like we free people from the tedious tasks so that they can focus on decision making. But once you're in decision making mode, you need to have access to all the data you needed, and then think through everything. And then these days, with all the technology, pre-generative AI, we have so much data. And then that's why we need the retrieval augmented, like the information retrieval. And the information retrieval summary, so when we face petabytes of data, like what is the next critical decision you need to make, fraud detection or executive direction, those are dependent on the quality of the information retrieval that you get. And I think large language model or just the modern generation of AI in general is going to be very, very helpful in helping you finding out the information, the needle in the haystack problem, or synthesize all the information thrown at you, which in old days it's literal like information overload. But now we can actually find out the most useful information to make decisions on top of it.
Absolutely. Interesting.
So kind of along those lines, I think about talking back up at productivity, right? If we wanted to, let's just say, flip the switch on Copilot 365 or Gemini or something that's this really sort of generalized productivity tool that's targeted at businesses, is that enough? I mean, does that solve all my AI problems? Because as a business owner, I want the simplest solution that I can marry to cost in a way that's understandable and manageable. Does that get me there?
Of course no, of course no. But I would say like the reason why many people claim this is a revolution is because like with the technology that we have access to today, it has a tremendous cost advantage compared to the old ways of doing things. So in that regard, if we talk about like risk before in a different session. Like the risk management, one of the risks is inaction itself is a risk. Like if you don't do anything, then you're going to be outcompete by your competitors who is doing this. So there is a price advantage if you're doing the right thing. On the other hand, it's definitely not as simple as just throw AI at it. And I have several. I've observed several people want to do that and failed. And then so basically, the challenge that I've seen is people switch back and forth on the two extremes. Either like I'm all in AI, like I'm just throw AI at it, I'm gonna be profitable, or the other hand, since that doesn't work, let's wait and see what other people do, right? I think the right solutions in the middle is really again like the internal combustion engine revolution. That's the earlier generation of revolution, like. Spend the time building the road, or spending time understanding, training the drivers instead of the horse, the whole industry built around the horse, and then instead of growing grasses, you try to get where the petroleum is. So I think a lot of those are actually going to be hard effort, but it's going to be so worthwhile because when you are actually near the end of this revolution, then you will be at a substantial cost advantage. And that's sort of related to my earlier point on modular approach versus systemic approach. We need to think about this whole process systematically to think through like what are the new department that I need, what are the department that I may need less, what are the reporting line changes, what are the kind of talent that I needed more, what are the ways to sort of attract talent to my organization, or build versus buy. Like, do I want to build everything by myself, or do I want to get someone to sort of do it for me, or directly buy the product off the shelf? How much of that is customizable? I think all of those are in the sort of systemic decision side. And in some cases, AI can be helpful, but I think at the starting point, it's probably much better if you get someone who can sort of guide you through that process.
Absolutely. Sure. So thinking about that a little bit, I think we can say most organizations will have use cases for multiple different categories of AI. You may have a productivity tool, you may have a concierge chatbot, you may have, something like document intelligence that's scanning some forms and doing some process automation. And all of these can be tied to business cases and hopefully, to an ROI. And so getting to that idea of cost, how do we, generally speaking, when we talk about AI, the first thing people go is, wow, that's expensive, right? As soon as they see the bill, they go, oh, wow, that's expensive. But how do we rationalize that in a way that makes sense? Is it expensive, or is it just in isolation more expensive than prior solutions have been?
Yeah, I think business probably in general has a way of looking at things in terms of what money's going out the door, what money's coming in the door, right? And so if all they're perceiving is that for this particular thing, I'm already paying these people to do this, so this is my known cost. Now I'm going to throw this on top of that, and it is relatively expensive if you're thinking about that. But people can be, all people, most businesses, I think many businesses, I won't say most, many businesses are short-sighted in that they don't understand maybe the revenue that they're losing because they don't really understand where they're having customer churn. They don't really understand if their pricing is correct. They don't really, there's no way for them to do that because there's so much data. There's especially large businesses who have large retail customers, especially that just have tons and tons and tons, millions of people shopping in them. I mean, how can somebody ever know, right, what revenue you're losing? How do you really know through any kind of, you have no evidence that you lost a customer, right? I mean, there was one to replace him, so what do I care? I don't know. So it's kind of, you need somebody to help you, they need somebody to help them to understand that there are ways that these can help with revenue, they can help keep the customers you have, they can help you just everybody be more productive and focus on mission critical things, but it can also generate revenue in ways that you probably aren't right now.
So to maybe think about it at a real simple case, if we take maybe the customer service example, the reason we're all frustrated when we're on the phone call in customer service and we're waiting is because they're trying to minimize their cost by limiting the number of people that they have available, because labor is costly. And so, if we can have, sort of triage, customer service triage that's maybe using AI and is doing sentiment analysis and is doing some, basic kind of branching and routing to figure out where to do it, we can have that same experience of getting to the right person, but ideally we can do so in a way that's much more cost effective, right? Because even if it's the cost of the AI system is, let's just say, $20 a day, if the cost of the person is $100 a day, then there's a clear ROI for that.
Yeah, I think like customer service chatbot is almost like a dead horse that we're beating. I think that is clearly understood. I hope, like using AI to sort of provide most of the customer service. That's the reason why we have dial 1, dial 2, right? in the phone setting, because that is much easier to understand and well justified. But I think the concept is sort of generalizable to almost any other categories. It's like AI in general, or technology solution in general, is almost like cloud computing in the sense it's elastic. If you have more, if you have a spike, then AI can sort of scale along with it. The reason why customer support, you always wait in the queue is, and they always say, we're in the high call volume today. They always have high call volume. Of course. Because they don't staff to the high call volume, because then you pay for someone for a full day sitting there waiting for so they have to staff it at a level where you have more phone calls than themselves, so that everyone, the customer service reps are always busy. AI doesn't have to be that case. So that is a very sort of, in my mind, a very solid case. But I can make the argument that this is generalizable. In almost any other AI category, you will have more productivity gains out of it if you implement it modularized, and then you will have a general sort of more effective organization if you design a system that's optimized for a new generation of technology. If you consider the potential out there, like it costs a lot to build all those roads, highways across the whole nation, right? Like I don't even know how many trillions of dollars equivalent today that invested in building that, but it's so worthwhile. Imagine you don't have that. So I don't consider it's expensive. I consider it's perceived as high price tag. And then there is a benefit, and then maybe in the shorter term, what's easier to justify is, we're generating revenue immediately for you, or we're helping you cutting costs. You can lay off some departments, which is the wrong thing to do. But on top of, like, one step beyond the myopic point of view is you can always generate more productivity, running a more efficient organization out of it by adopting AI. And at least at this juncture, it almost always is justified to actually adopt versus not adopting, to sort of do things the old way. And then later on, maybe there is a more nuanced technical question that, like, do we go with, I don't know, a self-hosted large language model versus buying from OpenAI, or a small language model, or do we build our own predictive engine ourselves, or buy something off the shelf, or rely on, I don't know, Salesforce Einstein, I don't know, like those like buy solutions out there. So those are secondary. To me, the primary decision is, except for some ridiculous cases, it is important or critical to be in the game.
Sure. So if we think back to kind of the cloud revolution, right? Everybody had a data center, either theirs or their friends, that they were in. And we started talking about the cloud, and everyone's like, it's going to cost me tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to migrate to the cloud, and it's this huge conversation. We don't have that conversation anymore today because everybody uses the cloud. It's the foundational assumption is that unless you have a special case, you're in the cloud, right? And so similarly, we have to shift to the foundational assumption that AI is a part of our systems and our operations.
It's tough to fight that inertia, though. Businesses just get in the rut of how they've been operating, and it just is difficult to change, right? I mean, it's hard to accept that that's going to be the new future, right?
So I want to maybe talk about a particular case, and I want to get your opinion on it. So we've talked a lot about cost and these systems that are sort of generalized for a problem, but when we're looking at AI in general, we're really talking about machine learning, right? Ultimately, it's everything kind of grows out of that. And there are all these, I think, interesting special cases around machine learning. Why would I build and train my own model, and build my own machine learning system versus leveraging some of these existing sort of AI capabilities?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, to me, a lot of it goes back to it's your data, right? It's your business, they're your products. There's only certain inferences that can be made because you are who you are as a business. You sell what you sell, you do what you do. I think that's probably a lot of it. There are things that we've talked about this before, there are things that you can go and buy, data sets and things that you can go and buy. But ultimately, if you want to make data about your customers, on your products or your revenue or where what my customer churn looks like, any of that stuff, right? You don't necessarily have to build everything, because there are ways that you can just host that stuff. You just have to have the right kind of guidance to understand how to implement it in the products that are offered, say, in the cloud, right?
Sure.
So I think it's more important that you not look for something that you think is going to be this panacea, right? It's not that, because I've seen this before, right? We were talking about the lab that I worked in a while ago. They had a what I would call a citizen data scientist on staff, and he was showing me what he was doing to try to find, he was trying to, I can't remember exactly the prediction, but he had trained this model that was like 99% effective, but he really didn't understand what it was that he was doing and why that wasn't really a valid conclusion, that the model shouldn't be, that's overtrained, right? I mean, there's just no way you're ever going to get that with the kind of algorithm that he was using, but he didn't see that, and I couldn't really, wasn't my place, it wasn't my job at the time to tell him, that you're making a mistake, right? And so that's what he perceived, and that's what the business perceived, because that's what he perceived. And it's just, you're going to now make fundamentally bad decisions because you don't really know how to use the tool. So they're powerful algorithms, they're powerful tools, but you have to have a good knowledge or good guidance into how to implement them. Yeah. And it's got to be based on your customers, your data, your process.
Absolutely. Okay, so we could say, if we have kind of two ends of the spectrum, there's always going to be special cases where there's value in sort of building your own, using your own data, training your own model, doing something that's really niche to solve a problem. There's always going to be sort of general systems that solve problems broadly.
Yeah, the broadly ones, like we talk a little bit about AI-generated images has 6 fingers. Yeah. I think that's a very neutral statement, because I'm not making assumptions. If you're an alien who lives in the 6-finger environment, that actually works for you, right? So you need to build the thing that actually works for you. The AI actually customized for you. You need to tell them we have 5 fingers. Like a lot of things eventually need to customize to your organizations, your business needs, and that is an effort that's very, very worthwhile.
But I think there are some classes of these things that are more where they've kind of taken, I don't even really know how to describe this, like route optimization is one of these things that I've seen before. So there are products that you can buy off the shelf that provide this kind of route optimization algorithm. You just have to kind of feed it your routes, feed it your stops, you feed it your own data, and then it can come up with what it thinks the best, like when the truck should return to station, like what routes to take, those kinds of things. They're not perfect, and you shouldn't think of them again as a panacea. But there are, I think, some of those kinds of tools that you can buy that fit that very, very, very specific thing. It's not like you can point AI at your entire organization. They're trying to solve one thing, right?
All right. So to wrap it up, as a business owner, I have to make the default assumption that I am adopting AI, or else I'm going to be outcompeted, right? I can't compete in the new world. I should tie my selection of my AI services to business problems in a way that ideally is measurable, to the degree that I can do a systemic adoption of AI, meaning that I refactor or reorganize my business, my processes, my personnel, I will get more benefit than having simple point solutions. And when I'm trying to figure out what AI to adopt, I need to try to find the right size to solve the problem, and the right cost, and tie that to business value. Is that generally true?
I believe so.
Great. And who's going to help me do that?